You think the way to stay in her mind is to flood her world with attention, to text her constantly, to always be available, to prove you care by never letting a moment pass without reminding her you exist. But that's exactly why she forgets you the second you're gone. Because the man who occupies space in a woman's thoughts long after he's left the room isn't the one who filled every silence with noise. He's the one who made silence feel full. Let me tell you what actually etches a man into someone's memory. It's not charm. It's not looks. It's not how much you talk or how clever your words are. It's presence. Real, undiluted, unshakable presence. And most men have no idea what that even means anymore because they've spent years confusing availability with value, attention with connection, and words with weight. You've been taught that caring means constant contact, that love means always responding, that respect means bending. And all of that has made you forgettable. If you're tired of being the guy she moves on from without a second thought, if you want to understand what actually makes a man irreplaceable in a woman's mind and heart, then subscribe right now. Not because I need your numbers, but because you need these reminders. You need a voice that tells you the truth when every other message you're getting is designed to weaken you, to make you more compliant, more available, more invisible. Hit that button and keep this truth in your life. Here's what presence really means. It means when you're with someone, you're actually there. Not half listening while scrolling. Not planning your next sentence while they're still talking. Not performing interest while your mind is somewhere else. It means your attention is a beam, not a flicker. It means you can hold eye contact without flinching, sit in silence without scrambling to fill it, and absorb what someone is actually saying instead of just waiting for your turn. And that level of attention, that quality of focus, is so rare now that when someone experiences it, they feel it in their bones. They remember it. They crave it. They compare everyone else to it. But let's go deeper because presence isn't just attention. Presence is the byproduct of something most men have lost entirely: internal stability. You can't be present if your mind is scattered. You can't hold space if you're constantly seeking validation. You can't make someone feel safe if you're drowning in your own insecurity. And this is where the misconception lives. You think being memorable means being impressive, exciting, unpredictable. You think it's about what you say, what you do, how you perform. But the truth is infinitely simpler and infinitely harder. It's about who you are when nothing is happening. It's about the gravitational pull of a man who doesn't need anything from you. Most men walk into interactions with women like beggars. They're hoping for approval. They're scanning for signs of interest. They're performing, auditioning, trying to earn something. And women feel that instantly. They feel the desperation under the jokes. They sense the neediness behind the compliments. They detect the absence of self-respect in every attempt to win them over. And it repels them. Not because they're cruel, but because nobody is drawn to someone who doesn't believe in their own value. You can't negotiate desire. You can't convince someone to see you as high value when everything about your energy screams that you see yourself as low value. Now contrast that with the man who walks into a room and doesn't need it to go a certain way. He's not performing. He's not trying to be liked. He's not monitoring reactions. He's just there, grounded in himself, comfortable in his skin, interested but not invested in outcomes. That man makes people curious. That man makes women pause. Because he's not giving them the usual script.
He's not chasing.
He's not proving. He's not even trying to be remembered. And paradoxically, that's exactly why he is. This is the hard truth nobody wants to hear. Desperation is the opposite of attraction. And most of what you've been taught to do in relationships, most of the advice you've absorbed about communication and effort and showing you care, is rooted in desperation. You're told to text back immediately, so she knows you're interested. You're told to always be available, so she feels prioritized. You're told to share your feelings constantly, so she knows you're emotionally open. And all of that trains you to hand your power away. It teaches you that your value is tied to her response, that your worth is measured by her satisfaction, that your identity depends on her validation, and once you start operating from that frame, you've already lost. Because now every interaction is a negotiation. Every silence is a threat. Every moment she's not responding is evidence that you're not enough. You become anxious, reactive, needy. You start doing more, saying more, giving more, hoping it will tip the scales. But it never does. Because the more you chase, the more you prove you don't believe you're worth chasing. The more you try to earn her affection, the more you confirm you think it's something you have to earn rather than something you naturally inspire. Let me tell you why this happens. It's not your fault that you started down this road. You were raised in a culture that taught men to be accommodating, to suppress their needs, to prioritize everyone else's comfort, to see masculinity itself as something dangerous that needs to be softened. You were told that being a good man means being harmless, that respect means deference, that strength means silence. And you internalized that. You learned to apologize for taking up space. You learned to dim your intensity. You learned to make yourself smaller so others would feel bigger. And now you wonder why nobody sees you. Here's what that costs you. It costs you respect, not just from women, but from yourself. Every time you betray your own boundaries to keep the peace, you lose a piece of your self-respect. Every time you pretend to agree when you don't, tolerate behavior you shouldn't, or stay silent when you should speak, you teach yourself that your voice doesn't matter. And that erosion happens slowly, invisibly, until one day you wake up and realize you've become a stranger to yourself. You don't recognize the man in the mirror. You don't know what you actually want anymore because you've spent so long adapting to what everyone else wants. And that hollow feeling, that quiet desperation, that sense that something essential is missing, that's the cost of living without presence. That's the cost of abandoning yourself. Now, let's reframe this entirely. The quality that makes a man unforgettable, the trait that makes a woman compare every other man to you and find them lacking, isn't something you add. It's something you return to. It's not a technique. It's not a strategy. It's the natural result of a man who has reclaimed his center. A man who knows who he is, what he stands for, and what he will not tolerate. A man who has boundaries that aren't up for negotiation, and a life that doesn't revolve around anyone's approval. Let me paint you a picture of this man. He walks into a conversation and he listens, truly listens, because he's not performing. He asks real questions because he's genuinely curious, not because he's trying to impress. When you talk, he doesn't interrupt, doesn't check his phone, doesn't let his eyes wander. He's right there with you, fully engaged, and you can feel the difference. It's magnetic. It's rare. It makes you want to keep talking, keep sharing, because his attention feels like a gift rather than a transaction. But here's the key. That same man will walk away without hesitation if the dynamic shifts into disrespect. He'll end the conversation if it becomes one-sided. He'll create distance if his boundaries are tested. He doesn't do it with anger or punishment. He does it calmly because he knows his presence is valuable and he won't waste it where it's not appreciated. And that calibration, that balance of total engagement and total willingness to disengage, is what creates the unforgettable impact. Because it tells the truth that most men are terrified to communicate. I am here fully when I'm here, but I don't need to be here. That changes everything. It transforms the dynamic from chasing to choosing. It shifts the frame from please pick me to I'm deciding if this is worth my time. And that shift is not arrogance. It's not game playing. It's self-respect made visible. It's a man who has options, not because he's juggling multiple women, but because he's built a life he actually values. A life that would continue with purpose and direction whether she's in it or not. Women sense this instantly. They can tell when a man has a mission beyond them. They can feel when his world doesn't collapse if they pull away. And counterintuitively, that makes them want to be part of his world more, not less. Because everyone wants access to something valuable. Everyone wants to be chosen by someone who has standards. Nobody wants to win a prize that was handed to them without effort, without vetting, without the person offering it believing it's actually worth something. So let's get practical. Let's talk about what this actually looks like in your day-to-day life. Because theory means nothing without application. First, you stop filling every silence. You get comfortable with pauses. You let conversations breathe. When you're with someone, you resist the urge to perform, to entertain, to prove your value through constant output. You trust that your presence is enough. You trust that silence shared with someone isn't awkward unless you make it awkward. And in doing that, you give the other person space to come toward you, to contribute, to invest. You stop doing all the work. Second, you stop being available on demand. You have a life. You have priorities. You have things you're building that matter more than immediate responses to text messages. And when you do respond, you're present in that response. You're not firing off half-hearted replies while doing three other things. You give real answers, or you wait until you can. This isn't about playing hard to get. This is about actually being engaged in your own life instead of waiting in the wings for someone else's attention. Third, you start saying no. You practice it. You get comfortable with it. When someone asks you to do something you don't want to do, you decline. When a plan doesn't align with your values or your schedule, you speak up. When behavior crosses a line, you name it and you create space. Not with anger, not with drama, just with clarity. And you watch what happens. You'll lose some people. Good. Those were the people who only valued you for your compliance. But you'll gain something infinitely more important. You'll gain yourself back. You'll remember what it feels like to live according to your own compass instead of constantly adjusting to everyone else's direction. Fourth, you redirect your energy into building, into creating, into becoming. You stop obsessing over whether she texted back and you start obsessing over your purpose, your fitness, your craft, your business, your art, your growth. You pour the energy you've been wasting on anxiety and speculation into something that compounds. And as you do that, something shifts. You stop needing validation because you're getting feedback from reality. You're seeing progress. You're feeling stronger, sharper, more capable. And that internal shift changes your external presence. You stop seeking. You start attracting. Fifth, you become ruthlessly honest. Not cruel, not harsh, but honest. You stop pretending to agree when you don't. You stop laughing at things that aren't funny. You stop nodding along to opinions you find ridiculous. You say what you actually think, respectfully but clearly. And yes, this will make some people uncomfortable. Yes, this will create friction. But it will also create respect. Because people trust someone who tells the truth more than someone who tells them what they want to hear. And more importantly, you'll start trusting yourself again. You'll rebuild the internal integrity that gets destroyed every time you lie to keep the peace. Now, let's address the fear that's probably rising in you right now. You're thinking, if I do this, I'll lose her. If I'm less available, if I set boundaries, if I stop chasing, she'll just move on to someone who'll give her what I'm withholding. And maybe she will. But let me ask you this. Would you rather be with someone who only stays because you're constantly performing and suppressing yourself, or would you rather be alone and free? Would you rather have a relationship built on your compliance, or would you rather have a connection built on mutual respect? Because here's the truth that will set you free. If setting boundaries and reclaiming your self-respect costs you the relationship, then the relationship was never built on solid ground. It was built on your willingness to shrink. It was built on a dynamic where you're the giver and she's the taker, where you're the pursuer and she's the prize, where your value is always under negotiation and hers is assumed. And that is not a relationship. That's a slow-motion surrender of your dignity, the woman worth having, the woman who will remember you and compare every man to you and find them all lacking, is the woman who respects a man with boundaries. She doesn't want a doormat. She doesn't want a yes man. She doesn't want someone who will tolerate anything just to keep her around. She wants a man who knows his value and operates from it. She wants someone who can hold space without collapsing into neediness. She wants presence, not performance. Substance, not show. And here's the beautiful paradox. The moment you stop trying to be unforgettable is the moment you become it. The moment you stop chasing validation is the moment you start inspiring it. The moment you reclaim your center and live from that place is the moment you become the standard by which everyone else is measured. Not because you're perfect, not because you have all the answers, but because you're real, because you're grounded, because you've stopped pretending and started being. This is about more than just relationships. This is about reclaiming your life. This is about waking up every morning and recognizing the man in the mirror. This is about building a life so full of purpose and meaning that another person's presence is a bonus, not a necessity. This is about becoming the kind of man who doesn't need to be remembered because his impact is undeniable. The kind of man who doesn't wonder if he's enough because he's too busy building something that matters. And when you become that man, when you operate from that place, you'll notice something remarkable. The people who are meant to be in your life will show up differently. They'll respect you more. They'll invest more. They'll match your energy because you're no longer accepting anything less. And the people who are only around because you were easy, convenient, or controllable will fade away. And you'll be grateful for that. Because every person who leaves because you set a boundary is making room for someone who respects them. Let me bring this home. The one quality that makes her compare every man to you, the trait that makes you unforgettable, the characteristic that sets you apart from the endless stream of men who all blend together in her memory, is presence rooted in self-respect. It's the ability to be fully there when you're there and fully gone when you're gone. It's the groundedness that comes from a man who has built a life he doesn't need to escape from. It's the calmness that emerges when you're no longer seeking validation because you validated yourself through action, through discipline, through becoming. You don't need more techniques. You don't need more lines. You don't need to learn how to manipulate or strategize or play games. You need to come home to yourself. You need to remember who you were before the world convinced you that being a man meant being a problem. You need to rebuild the relationship with yourself that you abandoned in pursuit of everyone else's approval. And when you do that, when you commit to that work, everything else falls into place. Not because you're trying to make it fall into place, but because you've become the kind of man around whom things naturally organize. This is not easy. This path will ask you to face uncomfortable truths about how you've been showing up. It will require you to let go of relationships and dynamics that feel familiar, but are actually toxic. It will demand that you sit with the discomfort of being alone until you're no longer lonely in your own company. It will challenge every impulse to seek external validation and redirect that energy inward. And it will be worth it. Every moment of discomfort, every relationship that falls away, every old pattern you have to break, it will all be worth it when you finally feel like yourself again. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are not too late. You are simply buried under years of conditioning that taught you to abandon yourself. And every day you commit to this work, every day you choose self-respect over approval, every day you live with boundaries and purpose and presence, you dig yourself out a little more. You reclaim another piece of your power. You become a little more of who you were always meant to be, and that man, the real you beneath all the performance and pretending, that man is unforgettable. That man is the standard. That man is the one she compares everyone else to and realizes nobody else comes close. Not because he's perfect, but because he's real. Not because he's always available, but because, when he's present, he's actually there. Not because he's chasing her, but because he's building something worth being part of. You are the answer you've been looking for. Not some technique. Not some secret. You. The version of you that stops performing and starts being. The version of you that sets boundaries and means them. The version of you that builds a life so compelling that people feel honored to be part of it. That version is already inside you. It's been there all along, waiting for you to stop looking outside yourself and come home. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Keep these truths in your feed. Keep this voice in your life reminding you who you actually are when the world is trying to convince you to be smaller, weaker, more agreeable. You need this. Not because you're broken, but because the culture is trying to break you. Fight back by becoming unbreakable. Fight back by living with presence. Fight back by being unforgettable. You're not alone in this. Every man who subscribes to this message, every person who commits to this path, is part of a community of people reclaiming their power. We're building something here. A space where truth matters more than comfort. Where growth matters more than validation. Where becoming the best version of yourself is the only goal that counts. Join us. Not as a follower, but as a fellow traveler on this path.